Hi there, friends. I am so excited that you have taken time to watch today, and you're going to be excited because guess what? In person today, we have one of my favorite authors and someone I hope that you know from her many, many, many books. Today, we have with us in person in the studio Karen Kingsbury talking about her book called A Thousand Tomorrows, which now has been made into a series available on PureFlix. I can't wait to talk to her in person. So glad that you're here. My name is Jean Thomason, and this is Momentum Influencers Network. Hi there, friends. As promised, I'm thrilled to let you know that here we are in the studio in person with the inimitable Karen Kingsbury. So thrilled to have her here. Incredible author. And if you've been reading books at all for the past how many years?
Just a few.
Just a few years. You have probably read one of her beautiful stories. So Karen, welcome to our studio today. Welcome to our friends at Momentum Influencers. We're amazingly over the moon. I am just kind of beside myself to have you here in person. And those of you who know me and know my background in children's ministry, I also was on the Women of Faith worship team for a number of years. And Karen was one of our celebrated guests and was often with us and shared her work and her life with us. So this is kind of a little bit of a reunion for me, and I'm thrilled to have her here. So today we are talking about this book, A Thousand Tomorrows, which has been turned into a series, which will be available to you on PureFlix. It's not a full-length feature, it's a series. We're going to talk about that, which is an interesting thing to do with this book. But first, I want to ask you, Karen, what originally inspired you to write this book? Because the content is very interesting. And I, by the way, binged and watched the entire series.
I can't believe you got to see it. Oh,
I
it's
did.
amazing.
I'm
It's
so
great.
excited about it. So talk to us about the story of A Thousand Tomorrows.
Well, I had been wanting to write a love story. This was several years ago, and I'd been thinking about, okay, Lord, what story do you have? What would be a great love story that would be unforgettable and people would hold on to it forever? And I went to go work out at the gym that day, and the girl behind the counter, Laura, she had been there for the years that I had been there. And that day, though, she had been crying, and I could tell. And so I stopped at the desk and I said, are you okay? You look like you're upset. And she said, oh. She kind of took a tissue and dabbed at her eyes, and she said, it's been just a really hard day for me. And she said, my son and I went this morning to the cemetery, and we visited the grave where his wife was buried a year ago today. She passed a year ago. And I said, oh my goodness, I'm so sorry. This woman was young, like in her 50s. I said, so your son must be pretty young, and his wife must have been pretty young. She said, yeah, his wife was just 24.
24.
And I said, oh my goodness. And, of course, it's not my business. But I felt like the Holy Spirit in that moment just was leading me to just keep that conversation going and lean in instead of leaning away. And I said, so was it an accident or was she sick? And she said, yeah, she had cystic fibrosis, a lung disease. And my husband was a basketball coach back at the time, and he had a player who had CF, a young player on a young team. And so I knew about it. I knew about this disease that, cripples the lungs, and it really does cut your lifespan down. And they've made great strides, but still, you suffer with it. I said, well, your son must have known then when he married her that she wasn't going to live a full life. And she said, well, first she did live a full life. But also, she said, worse than that. And she started kind of crying a little more. And she said, my son actually gave her one of his lungs.
Wow.
And I said, oh, it's just like a gut punch. And my heart was just seized with that. I said, so he gave her one of his lungs and it didn't work? And she said, no, it did work, actually. The doctor said it would only buy them 3 years. And it did. And I could not let go of that. I mean, I'm telling you, Jean, I was walking around my little stations and doing my little workout that day, and I just kept thinking 3 years. So he let somebody, open up his chest, and he take a lung out and give it to this girl he loved so much for 1,000 tomorrows. And that's how I had the title. At that point, I went, okay, Lord, I hear you.
Yeah.
It's going to be a love story about a guy who gives a girl his lung to buy 1,000 tomorrows. That kind of love. Like, what would it take to love like that? And then about a few weeks later, I was on an airplane, and of course, her story had nothing to do with, and I mean, the details were, I have no idea what their details were, but
Right.
for me, it was going to be about a lung transplant and cystic fibrosis at that point. So I got on a plane a little while later, and the plane was a large plane coming across country from an event that I was speaking at. And this guy gets on the plane, and he was like bigger than life, leather jacket, like big black hat, and his jacket said PBR. And I went, oh, I know. My husband watches that. That's the Professional Bull Riders. I know what that is.
Rodeo, wow.
And it was like this guy just stopped the plane. Like kids, grandparents, women, everybody was just like looking at him. He just had that effect. And he had a empty seat by him. So once we were up in the air, I went over and I said, excuse me. This is what you have to do if you're an author. You have to ask questions.
That's brave.
And I said, you're a bull rider. And he said, yes, ma'am. His name was Ross Coleman, 13th in the world, he told me.
Wow.
I said, I have questions about bull riding. Can I ask? And he said, sure. So I sat down and shared the whole rest of the flight with him. And he told me everything about bull riding. Like he let me feel the groove in his hand where he ropes in, ties that rope around before he gets off that, get onto the bucking bull out there and shoot. And he told me everything. And I thought, this guy, at that point, I wasn't thinking about my CF story.
Sure.
But as I was talking to him, it was like it all came together. And
Amazing.
I thought, I need a bull rider in my story. The bull rider, what would it take for a bull rider, tougher than nails, to say, yeah, go ahead, take one of my lungs because I love that girl enough to do that for 1,000 tomorrows. And I have my story.
Isn't that amazing? I love the way that the Lord would say, you're going to need this and you're going to need this idea and put it all together to create that story. Thank you for telling me, since I've watched this series, that I just love. So tip for all of you aspiring novelists, aspiring writers, ask the Lord for opportunities and ideas. Okay, here is the other fun thing. Your son, Tyler, who is 30, talk to us about what it was like working with him and that you and he together created the screenplay.
Yeah, so Tyler and I got to do a different one as well. We did Maggie's Christmas Miracle for Hallmark. So that was our first effort together. And I could see that Tyler had quite a talent for writing. And I thought, I can still afford him. I'm going to go ahead and see if I can write as much as I can with this guy. So I was, I'm still writing books, and I was working on some other projects. So when this came up and we said, can we screenwrite it? I trust him. I trust Tyler completely. So we got together, we did an outline, we agreed on which points should be kind of covered, which scene moments should happen from the book in each of the 6 episodes. And then once we agreed on the outline, Tyler took it and he did the screenwriting, really. You really can't like share a laptop. So, he just did that at his house, and he wrote the episodes. Then he would bring them to me. So we started with the first 3, and we would go through and just read it, table read it, right, in my kitchen. And when we would come to a place where I thought, I would, that's probably not what I would say. So it was very collaborative at that point. And we would take a whole day to do one episode and really nail it down that this is what we want the episode to feel like and be like and feel, the heart behind it. So once we got through the 3, then we did the next 3. And Tyler is a very fast writer. He has the eye of a director, and he is going to be doing this for all of his life. So I was very blessed to be able to work with him. Sometimes I think it's easy to think, well, he was working with you, but on this particular story for sure, I mean, he was the writer on it. He was the screenwriter, and I got to be the collaborator.
What made you decide to do the series instead of the long form film?
Well, when Sony Pureflix, Sony AFFIRM is it's an original Sony AFFIRM thing on Pureflix.
Yes.
And when they came to us and talked about this at the beginning, that was the vision that they brought to the table.
I see.
I think for me, I might have seen it as a movie, and then when they said, hey, we see it as a series, all of a sudden Tyler and I started dreaming about the outline, and it's like, yeah. If you're going to get into the rodeo world, and if you're going to see how these guys live and what it's like and how they get injured and how they come back, you need more than a movie. And we were really happy with the idea of 6 episodes.
So I enjoyed the character development and the fact that you find out about Allie slowly and her disease and her situation. So she has this to deal with. On the other hand, Cody has his whole early life and situation with his father to deal with. So talk about where that idea came from for his anger.
Well, that was something that I picked up when I had listened to a couple different bull riders, is that they have to find something that would kind of give them that bigger than life feeling to get on a bull. Like, why would you even do that? That's kind of my first question. Why would you even do this? And a lot of times they're battling something. There's something that they are taking on in those 8 seconds. For Cody Gunner, that something was his anger toward his dad. His father had left when his father was a pro football player. Left when Cody was just, 8 years old. And they have another child in the family, and that's Carl Joseph. And Carl Joseph has Down syndrome. And so Cody overheard his father say before he left, "I can't be a father to that son." So that was just devastating for Cody. And he fiercely loves Carl Joseph, his younger brother. But also, he always wondered he understood that his dad was leaving Carl Joseph because of the Down syndrome, which is just tragically wrong.
Yes.
But he never understood why his dad left him.
Right, exactly.
So always searching for that.
Talk about how you were able to weave the whole faith element into the story. I loved the way Allie's parents had such a strong faith and the way that they prayed, and that she chose to go to cowboy church, which was a lot of fun, going to cowboy church and seeing that. But because Cody had this anger issue, he was mad at God. So how did you put all that together?
Well, when I write about faith in general, I like to think that a story is physical, intellectual, emotional, and spiritual. And I think, it's sad for the people who can't do that, or that, in the secular world where they don't include that, because it is a part of every story.
Absolutely.
Whether a person chooses to believe or not, the idea that God is calling to them, tugging on their heart, that's real. And yes, his voice can grow dim, but the spiritual realm is more real than what we can see and touch right now. And so because of that, understandably, Cody, who is fighting this anger, actually holding on to it.
Yes.
He actually thinks the anger makes him better.
Yes, he does.
Yeah, he doesn't want a solution to that anger. And when his dad, starts to call and come around and he's sorry and he wants to make amends, and Cody, that's going to ruin everything for Cody. So he wants the anger. So, I think for me, the faith was a natural part of that Cody would be a person who would not understand for the life of him how a beautiful, talented girl like Allie Daniels could love a God that would allow her to be sick.
Right, exactly.
Not understanding and thinking that this world is our home, and that, earth is kind of the end all, instead of understanding that even Jesus did not have his last prayer answered. Face down in the ground in Gethsemane, "Please, Father, take this cup from me, but not my will, but yours be done." And he went to the cross. So we are going to go through suffering. It's part of life. That's what he promises us, John 16:33, that in this world you will have trouble. But be of good cheer, for I have overcome it. And that's the lesson here. And I think, the love of Allie changes everything for Cody when it comes to his faith.
Are there any other specific scenes you want to talk about without giving the end of the whole story away? Because it's too beautiful, and I hope that all of our viewers will take the time to watch the whole series. What else was one of your favorite moments?
I feel like every scene with Carl Joseph and Cody.
Oh, yes.
I mean, we were very blessed to get an incredible actor who was playing Carl Joseph, and he has film experience.
He's delightful.
He's delightful. And just the scenes that, brother, I got a new dinosaur shirt. Do you know that, brother? Dinosaurs are strong, right? You know that. And just the way Cody goes from being this angry, he never wanted to fall in love either. I mean, he had plenty of women coming through his life, but he wasn't looking to fall in love. But there was a piece of his heart that had nothing but love, and that was the piece that belonged to Carl Joseph. So watching their scenes, it was everything I'd ever hoped them to be.
Well, they did a beautiful, beautiful job, and I know you must be so amazingly pleased. It was lovely. I couldn't stop watching it, truly. And so I guess I always love to ask this. The very last question is this, because there's so many great themes. What do you most hope for viewers to take away from this series?
Well, 1,000 Tomorrows is a love story, ultimately. And as such, I really feel like we're lacking love stories in this space. Good. And I hope to bring that in a new and greater way all the time, even in the years to come. to this, because A Thousand Tomorrows is a love story that will remind you of a lot of kinds of love. Right. It's a parent love. It's your love for your parents and your love for your children, right. And it's the love that you might have for your spouse or for the one that you haven't yet met. Mm-hmm. It's a story of beautiful love and how love tears down fear and love removes anger. Love is more powerful than any force in the world, and we need more love stories. So if you love a good love story, A Thousand Tomorrows on PureFlix, all 6 episodes are going to be the best thing you've seen.
Absolutely. Karen Kingsbury, thank you so much for visiting with us today. And if you're a reader, you will love to pick up the book, A Thousand Tomorrows, and read it first, then watch the series, and that'll make you want to read the book. There's so many beautiful themes of forgiveness and gratitude to God and perseverance and healing, and I can't say enough good things about this. Karen, thank you for being with us today.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Thank you for taking time to watch and to think about picking up A Thousand Tomorrows and watching on PureFlix.